When I first opened the lawyer's envelope and saw my name missing from the will, I thought it was a mistake. I remember the sound of my own breathing, sharp, shallow, almost childlike, as my eyes traced every line again and again, hoping I'd somehow missed a page. But there it was, in black ink and legal phrases that felt colder than any winter. Everything, our home, the savings, even the car, was left to someone else. And in the final paragraph, just before his signature, my husband had written 7 words that broke something in me before they began to mend it. Forgive me. The letter will explain. For a long moment, I couldn't even cry. I just sat there at the polished table in the attorney's office, the sound of a ticking wall clock filling the silence between us. The lawyer, a young man who looked far too kind for this kind of work, cleared his throat and said softly, "He left you something else." A letter, sealed. I didn't open it that day. People think grief comes all at once, like a wave that knocks you down. But sometimes, it comes quietly, one realization at a time. My husband, David, had died 6 weeks earlier, after what should have been a minor surgery. 58 years old, healthy, sharp-minded. I thought we had time. 40 years together, and still, time had slipped through our fingers. The funeral had been simple, just like he'd asked. No eulogies, no flowers beyond what I wanted to bring. I chose white roses, his favorite, and placed one in his coat pocket before the casket closed. He used to tell me white roses were honest flowers. I never understood what he meant until that moment, when I realized honesty sometimes arrives dressed in pain. After the funeral, the days blurred together. I kept busy in small, meaningless ways, organizing drawers, cleaning things that were already clean, sitting on the porch just to watch the light change. I thought I was doing well, considering. Until the day the letter came. The first thing I noticed was the handwriting, his handwriting. It was steady, confident, familiar in a way that made my chest ache. He'd written my name across the envelope in that same deliberate style he'd used when labeling everything from toolboxes to Christmas cards. To my beloved Claire. I placed the letter on the coffee table and stared at it for hours. I made tea. I washed the same cup 3 times. I walked around the house he'd left to someone else. I didn't want to open it, not because I was angry, but because I was afraid of what it might say. When I finally did open it, it was evening. The sun was fading, casting a long gold light through the living room. I sat in the armchair David used to call his thinking chair, unfolded the paper, and began to read. My dearest Claire, if you are reading this, then I have failed to explain myself while I was still alive. That's on me. You deserve the truth, even if it hurts first. I stopped reading there. My hands trembled slightly, the edges of the paper softening from the warmth of my fingers. I took a breath and read on. You once told me that keeping secrets is a form of theft. I think about that often. There's something I took from you without realizing it, your choice. I tried to protect you in a way that wasn't mine to decide. I frowned, the words blurring slightly as I tried to make sense of them. You see, Claire, before I met you, I made a promise to a woman named Laura. She was my first wife. We were married for only 2 years before she passed away. You know I was widowed young, but I never told you that before she died, she made me promise to take care of her younger sister, Ellen, who was 16 at the time and had no one else. I did take care of her. I helped her go to school, get a job, and build a life. You knew her, actually, just not by that name. You knew her as Ellie, the woman who used to help with our finances. I froze. Ellie, the quiet, kind woman who handled our accounts for years. I'd spoken to her dozens of times. We'd had coffee together after David's surgery. I never knew she was part of his past. I never told you because it seemed unnecessary, and then, over time, it became harder to explain. But she fell into debt recently after her husband died. She never asked for help, but I found out. And when I knew my own health was failing, I realized I could help her one last time, by giving her what I could. That's why the will looks like it does. My first instinct was disbelief. It didn't make sense. How could he give away everything we'd built? But then I kept reading. I didn't leave you money, Claire, because you don't need it. You never did. You built our life from grit and grace, not wealth. What I wanted to leave you was something she could never have, freedom. The house, the accounts, they were always temporary. But your peace of mind, your strength, those are yours. You've never depended on what's in a bank. I had to stop again. My chest felt tight, 1,000 emotions colliding, hurt, confusion, the faint echo of pride. I left something else for you, though, the letter continued. The cottage, the one by the lake. It's still in your name, and no one knows but you. The deed is in the wooden box under the stairs. You always said you wanted to grow old there, surrounded by books and quiet. I hope you do. I dropped the letter to my lap and laughed, a short, broken sound that turned into tears. I remembered that cottage, our weekend retreat. We'd bought it when we were newly married, when we had nothing but dreams. I thought we'd sold it years ago, when we moved closer to the city. He had kept it. For me. The next morning, I drove there. It was early autumn, the air just beginning to turn crisp. The road was long and winding, lined with trees that were starting to blush gold. I hadn't been there in over 20 years. The key was still on my old ring. When I turned it, the door creaked open as if it had been waiting. Dust covered everything, but the light through the windows was exactly the same, soft, forgiving, golden. His letter had mentioned more, though. If you make it to the cottage, he'd written, look inside the old piano bench. Inside the bench, wrapped in a faded scarf, was another envelope, shorter, unsealed. Claire, if you found this, it means you chose to come. That means you're still braver than I ever was. I kept things from you not because I didn't trust you, but because I didn't want you to see how afraid I was, of losing control, of failing you, of being less than the man you believed in. You taught me what love looks like when it's quiet. I never said it enough, but you are the reason I became someone better than the man who once broke promises. When you forgive me, please also forgive yourself. For all the ways you think you could have saved me. You already did. I don't remember how long I sat there, holding that letter. The wind moved through the trees outside, brushing against the glass like a whisper. And in that quiet, something inside me let go. I realized forgiveness isn't something you give once. It's something you live with. It's choosing to believe that love, even flawed, can still be real. I didn't call the lawyer to contest the will. I didn't tell Ellie what I knew. A week later, I sent her flowers, white roses. No note. Just roses. Now, months later, I live here at the cottage. The lake is still as ever. The mornings are slower. I read more. I think more. Sometimes, when the light hits the water just right, I can almost hear David's laughter echoing in the trees. He was right about one thing, peace doesn't live in things. It lives in the spaces we finally stop fighting. And every evening, when I close the windows and feel the cool air settle in, I whisper a small truth to the man who once broke my heart to keep his promise. I forgive you, David. Then, softer still, and I forgive me too.